everyone. Welcome. This is episode 4 of the Hardwood Homies podcast. Our first episode as the Hardwood Homies NBA Draft podcast on iTunes. I'm Jackson Hoy. I'm here with Cesar Smokowski. How's it going, Cesar?
Hey, doing great, Jackson. Thanks to have everybody tuning in to the new podcast. Thanks for showing up.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome. So since this is our first time appearing on iTunes, and this is the first time we're really getting the real listeners that we're hoping to get, me and Cesar are just going to introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about who we are, what we're about. So both of us live in Lawrence, Kansas. I'm born and raised here. Cesar is originally from Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Yes, sir. That's where it's from. You know, that Tar Heel country. That's what we're all about, man.
Yeah, so both of us born and bred around blue blood basketball, and that's what really built our love for the game. And so we have this NBA Draft podcast. That's going to be the focus of what we're doing on here. We're going to talk a lot about the draft. Since this is our first episode, we'd really appreciate it if y'all could leave us reviews on iTunes, letting us know whether you liked it, if you think there's anything we can improve on. We're still getting started with this, so we have the framework, but there's stuff that we obviously need to improve on. So if you think of anything, please let us know. We want to be receptive to our listeners, and going forward, we want to make sure that we're catering to what you guys want to hear. And so, yeah, with that, we'll get into today's episode. And today's episode, we are talking mock drafts. We are mocking various lottery scenarios. I'm excited for this one. How about you, Cesar?
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting scenarios, a lot happening, dude. This will, show a lot and predict a lot for next year, so should be quite interesting.
Yeah, have you played around on Tankathon at all?
Yeah, I've looked at some of their scenarios in the past, and they have some really good information and have some fascinating scenarios on there. So, this one for this year should be fascinating.
Yeah, man, I love Tankathon. I would literally just sit there and just replay scenario, because it's crazy all the stuff that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, you never know with teams tanking and the era of force losing. Now you have all these different crazy scenarios of how the draft will play out. So yeah, it's crazy how everything has changed recently. So it's a really great resource.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll get right to it. So what we're doing on today's podcast is we use Tankathon.com, a great website for doing the lottery scenarios. We used it, and we ran 5 different scenarios, and then just got those scenarios, and then each of us made a mock draft for each of those scenarios. So we got 5 scenarios to go through, and me and Cesar will go through our picks, and then we'll talk about, which picks stood out to us, where we disagreed, that sort of thing. You ready?
Yeah, sounds good. Ready to get into these draft situations, man.
All right, so our first scenario, the draft lottery, getting the third pick was the Orlando Magic. The second pick, the Brooklyn Nets, whose pick is going to the Boston Celtics. And with the first overall pick in the 2017 NBA draft, the Philadelphia 76ers, which means that Phoenix is knocked down 2 spots to number 4, and the Lakers pick is knocked down to number 5, and it's being sent to Philadelphia. But outside of that, from 6th through 14, it's the predicted scenario. So, yeah, let's get right into this one.
All right, man, this would be quite a scenario for Philadelphia. Having number 1 picks back, years back to back would be crazy, and a lot of luck and trust in the system. So, this would be a great grab for them.
Yeah.
So who do you have number 1? I guess we both have the same person going number 1, of course, Markelle Fultz.
Yep, that was an easy pick. But things get interesting as soon as we get to number 2. Who do you have at number 2?
For number 2, I had Jonathan Isaac, the big man out of Florida.
Florida State.
Florida State, excuse me. He obviously, I think, would be a big pick for Boston if they don't get the number 1 pick, as they have the best odds to. Since, I don't think Lonzo Ball exactly fits in that scenario, seeing that they already have a point guard and have someone who can get you 8 assists a night in Isaiah Thomas. I think Jonathan Isaac is a huge defensive force, and he has shown a lot of versatility and promise on the offensive side of the ball in towards the end of the season. So I think he shows a lot that he can be a important piece on a contending team. So I think that'd be a solid number 2 pick. Of course, noticing that if they don't trade it, of course, looking for an immediate superstar.
Yeah, see, that's...
I know you one of as a scenario for you.
Yeah, see, I don't like Lonzo Ball in Boston either, but I think if they don't end up with Markelle Fultz, I think they just trade that pick because I think if you're Danny Ainge, you can't justify not trading that pick for Jimmy Butler, Paul George, or whoever, and end up with Jonathan Isaac. Like, listen, I love Jonathan Isaac. He's number 2 on my board, but his fit in Boston's questionable for me, and I don't think you can call that your great superstar haul with that pick because this pick has been their golden ticket for so long. So I actually mocked Boston to trade this pick to Chicago for Jimmy Butler. I didn't get into the specific trade for it, but there are obviously more pieces going either way. And then I had Chicago taking Lonzo Ball at number 2 because I think a lot of people see Ball as the number 2 player in this draft, and the Bulls don't have a point guard to build around. It looked like Cameron Payne would be that guy, but as soon as they traded for him, they sent him to the D-League, so I don't know what they're doing with him. So, yeah, Lonzo Ball be the point guard of the future for them. And then at number 3, you had Lonzo Ball, right, Cesar?
Yeah. I had Lonzo going number 3.
To Orlando.
To Orlando. So, I mean, I think Orlando at this point wants to, get the most talented and best player that they can at number 3. And if they do trade for, if whatever Boston does with Jonathan Isaac or they trade, I think that Orlando would be lucky to get Ball. I think he's a dynamic player. Of course, he has a lot of promise, even though, there is gaps in this game. But I think he shows a bright future and a guy that you can build around in Orlando that will attract other guys and will, be that guy where he'll be a great person to play around and certainly has the skills to elevate the Magic.
Yeah, for sure. Since I had Lonzo off the board already, I had Orlando taking Jason Tatum. If you've listened to our first podcast, which I'm assuming most of you haven't, it's on SoundCloud if you want to listen to it. But anyways, I'm not a fan of Jason Tatum, but I still think Orlando takes him here. They've got a new regime. They're looking for a player they can build their offense around, and I think Jason Tatum's a flawed player, but he at least looks like a guy who can be an offensive centerpiece. He's got that. A lot of people have made that Carmelo Anthony type comparison. I see him more as like a Tobias Harris, Rudy Gay type, but I do think Orlando would fall for him and end up taking him number 3. Then at number 4, we both had Josh Jackson go to Phoenix, and this is a fit that both of us really like, right, Cesar?
Yeah, I mean, last year one of the biggest weaknesses for the Suns was rebounding, that they needed a guy who was physical and very agile to be able to be a good rebounder and gives them a huge defensive boost since Josh Jackson is and can be an elite NBA defender. He has that quickness and strength and that determination to do that. And I think it'd be a very interesting lineup with him and Booker and Marquez Chris, and then when Dragon Bender finally becomes healthy, that should be quite an interesting
lineup.
He's
back. Bender's been healthy these last couple weeks of the season, but yeah, I do love that fit, Josh Jackson in Phoenix, because Devin Booker, their franchise player, his biggest weakness is perimeter defense, I'd say, and Jackson can help cover for a lot of that. And then you look at Marquise Chris, who's looking like their power forward of the future. He had a pretty impressive rookie year. Chris is not a good rebounder. And Josh Jackson, two of his most attractive skills at the small forward position are defense and rebounding. So I think that's a really great fit. And I think a lot of people will be mocking that Josh Jackson to Phoenix pick if Phoenix is picking 3rd or 4th.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't get Lonzo, and we both know how high Phoenix is on Lonzo, and then they have to deal with the whole Eric Bledsoe situation. But, with them getting Josh Jackson, I think that'll be an important key to their offense in the future, and surrounding, Jackson with stars like Booker, who's going to be a future star, as I believe. So it should be an interesting fit and hopefully a good one.
Yeah. Number 5, another pick we were able to agree on. This is a pick seemingly everyone can agree on. Malik Monk to Philadelphia. That's just an obvious fit. If Philadelphia is going to be playing Ben Simmons at point guard like they say they are, and I believe they can do it, but if they are, Malik Monk is a perfect fit next to Ben Simmons on the perimeter.
Yeah, I mean, he is an elite scorer and has a great touch with the ball. You saw in the tournament against North Carolina and other big-time defenses where he was able to hit crucial, game-leading shots in, the third and fourth quarter, and it showed that, he has a really great touch, and he showed that he, has a lot of versatility and can keep up with another elite point guard in De'Aaron Fox. So he showed that, he has a great touch for the ball and, can have a lot of success on the NBA level.
Yeah, that's a pretty obvious fit. We don't need to talk about it a whole lot just because I think almost everyone can see that one. Yeah, that's a good one. And then on to number 6, Minnesota. So you had Lauri Markkanen, power forward from Arizona, going to Minnesota. Talk about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Markkanen. I think he has an incredible potential. You talk about already in his career, he's one of the best 7-foot shooters in NCAA history.
Maybe the best.
Incredible three-point shooter. And at 7 foot, he has a release where it's practically untouchable. Like, he has an incredible vision, and he's, his shot is untouchable at that point. So you think about Minnesota, where they already have a good core group, but I think Markkanen could be an elite scorer for them and, be able to push them over the edge where they're finally turning that corner. And I can't imagine what Tom Thibodeau, their coach, would be able to do with him on the offensive and defensive end, because occasionally Markkanen can grab a rebound and handle the ball well. So I think he'll be a great fit for that system.
Yeah, I didn't put Markkanen here because I have another pick that I'll get to in just a second. But I love the fit of Markkanen in Minnesota. Later on in another draft, I put that as a fit. So my spot, I had Jonathan Isaac going there since I didn't have him going number 2. I have Isaac going to Minnesota. This is maybe my favorite fit in the entire draft. I like Monk in Philly. I like Jackson in Phoenix, but Isaac in Minnesota just is amazing to me. I think next to Karl-Anthony Towns is just so perfect because he can defend 3 through 5 and switch on to guards, and his electric athleticism and three-point shooting, that's all going to be great in Minnesota. I think Minnesota also is a great fit for Isaac because I love Isaac a lot, but I don't see him as a featured scorer. I see him more as a complimentary scorer, and I think Minnesota's already got those established scores in Wiggins, Towns, Levine, although I think they'll end up trading one of Wiggins and Levine, but that's another podcast. Anyway, Isaac's not going to have to be a primary scorer there. He can stand in the corner, stay around the three-point line, make open jumpers, and then have other people create shots for him, which is what allows him to be successful on offense as a high-efficiency finisher, and then just be a game wrecker on defense and help them improve that defense a lot because it definitely has work to be done.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about Tom Thibodeau, one of the best defensive coaches in the league, in my opinion, and you give him a guy with all the potential of a Jonathan Isaac. I mean, that defense was already improving in the second half of the year. I think it showed a lot of progress, but if you add a huge defensive player with all that potential like Isaac, I think it's going to be a huge factor, and that'll certainly give their team a boost and, get them from being in the lottery to, contending for a playoff spot. So I think that's a great fit too.
Yeah, he's a different player than Draymond. He doesn't handle the ball like Draymond does, but he has the potential to have that effect on Minnesota that Draymond had on the Warriors. So I would be really excited about that. At number 7, we got the Knicks. You had Jason Tatum going to the Knicks. I had Jason Tatum going off the board at 3. So talk about Tatum going to the Knicks.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of set this pick around, the idea that, neither of us are too hot on Jason Tatum. I think, he can put the ball in the net, but the question is whether he'll be motivated to do anything outside of that. But I think he would be a good fit in New York as another scoring option and, a catch-and-shoot three-point shooter as well, alongside Porzingis. And if Carmelo moves or if he doesn't, I think that Jason Tatum will certainly get a lot of touches with the ball and, can show that he's an elite scorer at New York. And I think that that's what they're looking for. They're looking for primary scoring options alongside Porzingis to sort of build a new regime around. since Phil Jackson isn't really happy with what's happening now. So I think that, it'll be an interesting pick for the future and seeing how he'll fit with that core group.
Yeah. I'm not high on Tatum, but I can understand that fit. I had the Knicks taking De'Aaron Fox at number 7. This was something I found myself picking a lot. I think Fox makes a lot of sense for the Knicks. The Knicks have absolutely no young guards, and Fox has a chance to be a really dynamic pick-and-roll player with Porzingis and those other young Knicks bigs. You look at the success Willie Hernan-Gomez had this year. New York's does have a good front court for all their flaws. And I think Fox just makes a lot of sense there because if I don't think they'll continue running the triangle, which is good because I don't think Fox would be able to thrive in that sort of system. I think Fox is better where he can use his open floor athleticism. And I think if they can allow him and Porzingis to run the floor together, run pick and rolls together, that sort of thing, that's going to be a really great combination for them going forward. And I think Porzingis will help mitigate Fox's shooting struggles because we can put a guy at power forward or center out there who can shoot, help space the floor out for a guy like Fox.
Yeah, I think that that's a good fit too. They certainly need an upgrade at the point guard spot with Derrick Rose. The inconsistencies of his game and often injured. I think De'Aaron Fox is a good fit there, and I think he would get along well and be a good match with Porzingis. I just put Jason Tatum at that spot because I thought the potential if he's still on the board at that point is too high to sort of give up for the Knicks. I think they're looking for a new superstar, and I think, Jason Tatum, regardless of his holes, could be that guy.
Yeah.
He could emerge, but, I think De'Aaron Fox is a good fit too, so.
Yeah, number 8, Sacramento, their first of 2 picks in the lottery. You had De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, in the same way that you're talking about, De'Aaron Fox certainly has an NBA pedigree already. He has elite athleticism and quickness, and he shows great control with the ball. And I think it'd be a great piece along in Sacramento, along with the new rebuilding, young cast with Buddy Hield and Skull, the other rookie that they have that's been pretty good. So I think that he would be a good fit, and I think Sacramento's goal at this point should be getting the best player left at that number 8 spot. So I think that De'Aaron Fox certainly would be that guy for them. So him with Sacramento or the Knicks, I think would be a good pickup.
Yeah, I had the Knicks. The Kings taking a point guard too, but I already had Fox off the board, so I had them taking Dennis Smith Jr. at number 8. I think the Kings need to nail down the future at point guard because I don't think Darren Collison's the future. I don't think Ty Lawson's the future. Those guys are already in their late 20s. And I think Dennis Smith has a chance to form a really fun duo with Buddy Hield in the backcourt. And one thing that I was also thinking about with the Kings is Vivek and his kind of craziness with how he falls in love with players. It's well documented how last year he'd completely fallen in love with Buddy Hield, and that led to his pursuit of DeMarcus Cousins and overvaluing of Buddy Hield because he thought Hield's the next Curry. I could definitely see Vivek watching a Dennis Smith dunk compilation and then deciding, oh my God, this is the number 1 player in the draft. I have to get my hands on him.
Yeah, Dennis Smith certainly has that flashy offensive game that, attracts some GMs that are, certainly looking for that. And I think that, that would be an interesting pairing, him and Hield. So, yeah, I think that that's a good pick too. You get him at that 8 or 9 spot, then I think that would be, good value. And I think Dennis Smith has a lot of potential with also that elite athleticism, and he certainly, worked on his jump shot and improved
37% at
this past season.
37%, which is better than De'Aaron Fox. It was good progress. His jumper still needs work. He has some bad misses, but yeah, he's made progress, which is good to see. And he's also an underrated distributor, I think. I think a lot of people are overlooking that when they're scouting him. So yeah, I like Dennis Smith. Number 9, Dallas Mavericks. Who'd you have?
I had the guy that you had going to Sacramento. I had Dennis Smith. I thought the exact same thing, that Dallas has a lot of good shooters around him. He has Harrison Barnes. He has Seth Curry. He has Dirk, of course.
Wes Matthews.
So I think that they can, if they have all those good elite shooters, then I think that Dennis Smith, a very athletic point guard who can attract attention and then kick it out to shooters, and is a very underrated, distributor and passer and showed, a lot of skill at that at NC State. I think that he can be their guy going into the future, and I think Dallas would be a good pickup with him and, having other elite guys around him.
Yeah, I really love the idea of Dennis Smith in Dallas because I think that with the right coaching, the sky's the limit for him, and I believe in Rick Carlisle as a coach. Sacramento, I like Dave Yeager. I don't know how good of a developmental coach he is for point guards just because he hasn't been around the league that long. But a lot of people know that Rick Carlisle's a top 5, maybe top 3 coach in the league. So I think that'd be awesome if Dennis Smith ended up there. I had Dallas taking Frank Ntilikina. I believe that's the pronunciation. Frank Ntilikina from France. I think it's an easy fit to see just because the Mavs need to take a point guard here, and Ntilikina is the last of this elite point guard group that's left on the board here. And so the Mavs are also a team that's really invested in international scouting. So if they've done their work, then they've definitely scouted Ntilikina a lot, and hopefully they like him because all my scouting I've done on Ntilikina, I've really liked him. So I think with their front court of the future nailed down, they've got Barnes, they've got Noel, that's their power forward and center going forward. I think the Mavs don't need to take Markkanen here. A lot of people like Markkanen because they're like, oh, Markkanen can be the next Dirk, but they don't need him with Noel and Barnes already there. So I think Ntilikina is the pick here because point guard is more important than power forward in today's NBA. If you have an elite point guard, I mean, almost every playoff team has an elite point guard, and there's not a lot of elite point guards who are sitting on the outside of the playoffs. So I think Ntilikina has a lot of opportunity to develop in Dallas.
Yeah, I think that Ntilikina has certainly showed that there's not very many holes in his game, and he has, developed everything very well, and, would be a good fit for, any team that's looking to build around him. I think that he, shows a lot of potential and can, continue to develop his game and create, his certain attributes of his game that could become elite. So I think that he shows a lot of potential and would be a good pick there.
Yeah, number 10, Kings again. This pick from the Pelicans. Who'd you have?
I had the same guy as you, very similar ranges. I had Ntilikina because I think that with with De'Aaron Fox at number 8, I think that he could play the 1 very well. I don't know how he fits.
I actually like that idea of putting Ntilikina at the 2 and Fox at the 1.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because I think those two would run very well together, and Ntilikina is a very good shooter. He's developed a good range on his shot, so I think that he could, be another weapon for De'Aaron Fox when he, is moving in the pick and roll and can create space between him and a defender. So, yeah, I think that those two would work well together.
I think you could put Buddy Hield out there with him, too, and have Ntilikina's big enough. He can defend small forwards. I mean, he's 6'6", 7-foot wingspan. That's big enough to defend small forwards, most of them. So, yeah, you could have Fox guard point guards, Hield guard shooting guards, and Ntilikina guard small forwards. That'd be a pretty powerful lineup out there that would get you a lot of playmaking and a lot of skills out there. I like that. I hadn't thought of that, but I like that fit a lot, actually.
Yeah, I think that would be quite a powerful lineup. You talk about having 3 guys that can shoot and create their own play.
Oh, I don't know if Fox can shoot, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, so those guys, I think that would be quite a unique lineup. So yeah, I think that would be an interesting fit.
Yeah, at 10, I had Sacramento taking Lauri Markkanen. He's the best player on the board at this point. I think there's a pretty clear tier of 10 prospects, and then it kind of drops off after that. Depends on how you feel about Zach Collins. Some people put Zach Collins in that tier too. But yeah, I think there's pretty clear 10 elite prospects, and then it drops off. So Sacramento gets the best player on the board, and they need to grab talent wherever they can. And I think he'd fit great running pick and rolls with Dennis Smith. That'd be an awesome fit together. And also, I think he gives the Kings a nice trio of young bigs with Skal Labissiere, Willie Cauley-Stein, and himself. Any of those guys can play together because, Markkanen and Skal are both good shooters that can space the floor, and then either of them can spend time at center, or they can be out there with Willie Cauley-Stein, with Cauley-Stein as a rim runner and rim protector, and then the other guy floating around the perimeter. So I think that'd be a nice little front court that they'd have going forward.
Yeah, that would be a good pick. I think I don't know if Markkanen is going to drop that far. I think he has too much potential for someone like Minnesota or someone in the New York Knicks. I don't think that I think that he is too talented and has too high of a ceiling for them to pass on him. But I think if he does land in that range, I think that'd be a really good pick.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the teams, I think it's possible he could fall that far if Isaac ends up in Minnesota, just because I don't see the Knicks grabbing him. I don't see Sacramento grabbing him the first time around. So I think in this scenario, it's possibly falls, but obviously there's different scenarios. We'll get to those. Who'd you have at 11?
All right, number 11. I had the big man out of Wake Forest, man. This is my dude, John Collins, the power forward from Wake Forest. I think with the
Going to Charlotte. Going to Charlotte.
Yeah, going to Charlotte.
Yeah.
I think that he'd be a great fit with Charlotte. He showed at his season with Wake Forest this year as a sophomore. I think that he showed that he can be a huge factor on the offensive side of the ball and on the defensive. He is a great rebounder and could be the dominant inside force that the Hornets are looking for, along with a guy, along with other elite defensive guys like Cody Zeller that play that system well. And I think that John Collins could be that piece that you add with guys like Kemba Walker and, Cody Zeller that can, really help that team progress and make that next step.
Yeah, I kind of like that fit. And Collins' developing mid-range game fits well with Cody Zeller's awful mid-range game. So that I think Collins would be a good fit there. I have a different Collins going to Charlotte. I have Zach Collins. I hate to make this pick. This is a pick everyone's making, but when it comes down to it, this pick makes a lot of sense. Where Miles Bridges still in the draft, I'd put him here. I might have gone higher actually, but a lot of people made the Miles Bridges to Charlotte pick, and it was a good pick. I thought it was a good fit for both of them. But Miles Bridges headed back to Michigan State, so now it's Zach Collins, and it makes a lot of sense, even though a lot of people are mocking it. He gives them insurance in case Cody Zeller wins a huge offer sheet that Charlotte doesn't want to pay, and he also has the upside to supplant Zeller down the road. I think he could also potentially play next to Zeller a little bit because of his versatility. I mean, he can post up or he can step out on offense, and he's quick enough that he can switch on to pick and rolls and potentially play some power forward on defense. So I like Collins. I think he'd be a good grab for Charlotte, just grabbing the best player on the board because that's a team that's got a lot of problems and needs to probably grab talent wherever they can.
Which do you think Zach Collins is a better player, an NBA talent than John Collins? Because I don't know if I agree with that.
I think Zach Collins has more upside. Just you look at his rim protection ability and his ability to step out. Those are two things that are huge for centers in today's game, and I don't know if John Collins can be a great rim protector in the NBA. John Collins, I kind of see him more as an elite sixth man in the NBA than as a starting center, just because I don't know if he's big enough to protect the rim like that. I hope I'm wrong because I like John Collins, but I see him more as like an Enes Kanter type where he comes off the bench and is a big scorer and rebounder for you, which is still a valuable player. I just think Zach Collins has more potential to be a starter and a defensive impactor, which at center is your biggest thing you want to look at is defensive impact.
Makes sense.
Yeah, who'd you have at 12 to Detroit?
Number 12 for the Detroit Pistons, I had Isaiah Hartenstein, the international power forward. This young man really put on a clinic at the Nike Summit's hoop event, and I think that he showed that he can be a great fit with Detroit. He would be a good fit with Drummond, as Hartenstein can easily swing to the perimeter and has a great, can stretch the floor that way. And obviously Drummond is a elite rebounder. So while Hartenstein isn't a fantastic rebounder, Drummond can make up for some of that, while Hartenstein can certainly put the ball in the hoop and has elite range and has developed a nice shot. So, and I think that he has great athleticism and has shown that he can control the ball and move off of pick and screens really well for a big man at 7 foot. So I think that that'd be a really good fit for Detroit alongside Drummond and those other guys.
Detroit's been looking for that stretch four to put next to Drummond. They took Henry Ellenson in the draft last year. They signed John Lewis to a big contract. And Lewis particularly was kind of good last year, but I think Hartenstein would have the most upside going forward of any of those guys because he can handle the ball and he can actually play defense, unlike Lewis or Ellenson. So yeah, I like Hartenstein there a lot. They probably would have to end up trading one of Ellenson or Lewis, but yeah, I think that pick makes sense. I like it. I had Detroit getting more desperate. I had them taking Harry Giles, number 12. I've got Giles at number 25 on my board, so this is a desperate move from Detroit. It'd be a really risky pick that's based totally on upside because obviously Harry Giles didn't do a whole lot last year at Duke. Teams taking him are mostly doing it based on his high school production. But I think that Detroit's got so many issues going for it. I mean, they're already capped out, and if they're truly going to give Kentavious Caldwell-Pope the max this summer, they'll be looking at the tax next year, and so they have no way to acquire talent to a team that won 37 games last year. So I think that with this pick, they're going to have to swing for the fences, and Giles gives them the opportunity to do that because if he's healthy, if he's playing hard, and if he regains his form that he looked like in high school, this would be a big steal.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly, a big risk, big reward pick. Harry Giles, I like his potential at 6'11" and a really big dude, a very
7'5" wingspan. Yeah.
But, I think the biggest problem, of course, he was, hurt. But I think that at Duke, when he was on the floor, he did get a certain amount of touches at Duke that he sort of showed, that he never got in his rhythm, and he didn't really, show that he was, entertaining the fact that he's going to play hard. So, I mean, I think that would be certainly an interesting pick and a big gamble for Detroit. But, I'm sure that, if they really want to build to be a contender again, they have to, find a guy, in the middle of the, the lottery that'll give him that boost. And I think Harry Giles, if he really commits himself to it, I think he could be, talking about immediate impact. I think Isaiah Hartenstein is, of course, more of a sure thing where it's like, okay, that guy can, what you're getting from him. But, I think Harry Giles, if they really want to, go all in, I think that would be certainly an interesting pick.
Yeah, who'd you have at 13?
13, I had, similar to yours, I had Zach Collins from Gonzaga, the power forward. I just,
going to Denver.
John Collins and Zach Collins with two picks. I think Zach Collins could be an elite rim protector and big man next to Jokic in Denver. And, I think that he can be an offensive weapon and a defensive huge impactor as he protects the rim well. And I think he'd fit well with Jokic since Jokic is one of the best, big men passers in the league. So he could show that, he can work and, get Zach Collins open looks. So I think that'd be a good fit at number 13.
Yeah, I like that fit. I had Denver taking OG Anunoby, which is another risky pick after Detroit took Harry Giles at 12. But I think Denver can afford to take a swing here because they've got a lot of young guys. I mean, Malik Beasley barely played this year, and he looks like he'll be a player going forward. So they're already stacked, yeah. So I could even see them trading this pick in a part of a larger package maybe. But I think that taking a chance on Anunoby, who has the potential to be a game-wrecking perimeter defender, makes sense. I mean, 6'8" with a 7'6" wingspan and a chiseled, I think, like 245-pound frame. If he ever develops even a semblance of a jump shot, he will destroy. So, yeah, I think Denver taking that upside pick on Anunoby makes sense.
Yeah, I think that would be, if he does develop into all of his potential, I think that would be a really good pick for Denver. You give Denver, one of the up-and-coming teams, another defensive stopper and one of those elite defender. I think that gives him a lot of upside, and of course he can develop on the offensive side since he has such great length and size. And of course he has, I think he showed his agility and strength.
Yeah, he's got flashes of a jump shot. Yeah, he's got flashes of a jump shot. If it shows up, then he's scary. Who'd you have at 14 to Miami?
Miami, I had Terrence Ferguson, shooting guard, and I think that would be a good fit for Miami since the way that they got back, into the playoff races was with good shooting and being efficient with the three ball. So I think that he is an incredibly athletic and fluid shooting guard. He could be another, athletic shooter along with, Goran and Dion Waiters, and then, of course, Josh Richardson and those guys. And I think that he showed that he can move off of screens really well, and he worked well in a fast-paced offense. So I think that he, showed that he can be lottery talent and had a lot of upside. So I think that Miami would have a new up-and-coming player in Terrence Ferguson. I think that he could fit that fast-paced offense really well.
Yeah, I had Miami taking Isaiah Hartenstein. We talked about Hartenstein already. I think his perimeter-oriented game fits well next to Whiteside, who's playing around the rim. That'd be a similar fit of him playing with Drummond in Detroit, actually. Whiteside and Drummond are fairly similar players. So, yeah, on a lot of teams, I'd prefer Hartenstein to play center, but I think he can definitely play next to Whiteside.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good fit. Whiteside, of course, is an elite, rebounder and shows that they can have that interior presence, and then Hartenstein can do what he does on the perimeter and get open looks. So yeah, I think that would be, a good pick.
Yeah. All right. We're on to the second scenario for our mock draft of the lottery now, and the rest of these scenarios we'll probably be running through quicker since we've already talked about each of these prospects. So we might just touch on their fit briefly if it's a new fit or anything. But yeah, these next ones will be going through faster since the first time through we're going to talk about the prospects. And if there's any new prospects, which there will be, we'll talk about them. But yeah, these next ones will definitely be going faster.
I think we're speeding through them next round.
Yeah. This scenario, the third overall pick was once again the Orlando Magic. The second overall pick, once again, the Boston Celtics via Brooklyn. And with the first overall pick in the 2017 NBA draft, we have the New York Knicks drafting number 1. And that means that Phoenix has been knocked to number 4. The Lakers pick has been knocked to number 5, and it's being sent to Philadelphia. Philadelphia's pick's been knocked to number 6, and then Minnesota's pick has been knocked to number 7, and then it's the same from 8 through 14. So, Knicks, number 1 overall. I had Markelle Fultz. Who'd you have, Cesar?
I had Markelle Fultz too. I think this would be the miracle that Phil Jackson's looking for. You look out and get the number 1 pick, and then you can, move on from Carmelo and build your team around Porzingis, and then of course a future superstar in Markelle Fultz. So if they do get that number 1 pick, I think that would be a huge miracle for them.
Did you see that video where Andrew Sharp went and hung out with Fultz and his family on Sports Illustrated?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Fultz seems like a good kid, and he certainly has the drive and all the grit to be a really great player.
Yeah. Then at number 2, Boston. Who you had? Josh Jackson.
Yeah, I think that if I expect if Boston gets a good enough deal, if they get a Jimmy Butler, if they get a Paul George in the mix, then I think that they will trade it. But in case they don't, I think Josh Jackson would be a good fit. The Celtics have been a top 5 defensive team all year round, which is of course good and a reason why they got the number 1 seed in the East. But they've been 28th in the league in rebounding percentage, which was not good, which showed their sort of weakness. And Josh Jackson sort of fits both of these criteria and weaknesses well. Jackson's, obviously a very good defender and has great size and athleticism on the defensive end. And then he's also one of those guys that can get you quite a few rebounds along with scoring the ball. So I think that this would be a good fit if they don't find anything in the trading market. I think that if they need a new player to upgrade their defense and rebounding game, it certainly can be Josh Jackson.
Yeah, I had Boston making the same trade they did last time, where they send the pick to Chicago, and Chicago takes Lonzo Ball. At 3, we both had the same guy. You had Lonzo Ball. I had Jason Tatum. And at 4, I had Josh Jackson going. Same reason. I love that Josh Jackson and Phoenix fit. And at 4, you had Jason Tatum. You just want to talk about that real briefly?
Yeah, so I think Tatum would be a major scoring threat alongside, big-time guys like Eric Bledsoe and Devin Booker. Phoenix has an up-and-coming group where they have their point guard and their shooting guard, of course, Bledsoe and Devin Booker. And then they have a power forward in Goran Dragic. So the main upgrade that...
You mean Marquise Chris?
Yeah, sorry, Marquise Chris, sorry, that's their center.
Dragon Bender. You said Goran Dragic.
Yeah, sorry.
Dragon Bender, yeah.
Yeah, talking about Marquise Chris.
Yeah.
And then I guess the major upgrade that they would need is at shooting port, and Jason Tatum could be another scoring threat alongside Devin Booker. And I think that he would get a lot of open looks and can work well in that, fast-paced offense, and he showed that he can work around screens well and move off the pick and roll. So I think he can show that elite athleticism and good shooting in Phoenix if they need another offensive piece. So
all right, number 5, we both had Malik Monk going to Philadelphia again. Again, that's a pick that makes a lot of sense. And then at number 6, Philly's picking again. I had Frank Ntilikina. I think Philly needs a point guard, and they need him to be a good shooter. And out of the Smith, Fox, Ntilikina group, I think Ntilikina is far and away the best shooter. So even though he's probably not as good as Fox objectively, I think he fits better than Fox does. And even though it'll be fun to keep Fox and Monk together, I think Ntilikina makes more sense in Philadelphia. So I have them going that way. Who'd you have Philadelphia taking 6th?
I had them taking Markkanen. I think that the key to them winning and turning that huge corner that we all think that they will in the coming year is that they need to surround Simmons with shooters. I think Markkanen can be that guy. He can be a corner presence for them, and I think that alongside Simmons, he can get open looks and work in that offense with Simmons and Embiid really well. And I think that they need another scoring threat alongside those two, of course. And I think that Markkanen can be that guy. And I don't think that they already have. Of course they may need a point guard, but I think that if you move, you can shift Malik Monk and TJ McConnell. Depending on their lineup next year. So I think that Markkanen, certainly could have a big presence in that lineup, and I think that could fill a big hole in needed shooting. So
for sure. Number 7, Minnesota. Both of us had Jonathan Isaac going there. We've talked about that one. That's such a great fit. Both of us like that fit. That one just makes a lot of sense. Number 8, I had Sacramento taking Dennis Smith Jr. Again, I think Sacramento has that potential to fall in love with Dennis Smith. Vivek falling in love with the dunk compilation of Dennis Smith. So I think that's an easy fit. And then you had him taking Fox, and did you have him taking Fox last time?
Yes. So I think that Fox, he may fall to Sacramento because of his lack of a jumper, but I think that he has, elite athleticism and certainly showed a lot of persistence, and that he can get his teammates involved well. So I think that Sacramento could also build around him as well as Smith. So either of those guys I think would be a good pickup. Yeah,
and then at 9, you had Dennis Smith Jr. ending up in Dallas again. We talked about that fit. That makes sense. And then at 9, I had Dallas taking De'Aaron Fox, and so they need a point guard. I think they'll take a point guard here unless Ntilikina, Fox, Smith, and Monk Ntilikina, Fox, and Smith are all off the board, which I don't see that happening, but it could happen. So they need a point guard. Fox is a steal at 9. His shooting struggles are mitigated on a Dallas team that can surround him with a number of good shooters. As mentioned, Seth Curry, Wes Matthews, Harrison Barnes, all those guys. And besides, Rick Carlisle always gets the most out of players who are competitive like Fox. So I think Fox makes sense in Dallas. That's an easy fit to see. Number 10, I had Lauri Markkanen, ended up in Sacramento. Same reason. I like that fit next to Dennis Smith Jr. Who'd you have Sacramento taking at 10?
10, I had Zach Collins out of Gonzaga. I think that he would be a good guy in that front court. You talk about Collins and the outstanding play that he had in college, and I think that he can be that elite defender that Sacramento really needs, and that he can really protect the rim and had an outstanding PER of 31.5. So he showed that he can be incredibly efficient and have an impact on both sides of the court. So I think that'd be great.
If Willie Cauley-Stein doesn't work out, which I'm not convinced that he can long term, Collins is a great piece to put at center in that front court. Number 11, I ended up sticking with Zach Collins in Charlotte here. Same reason as last time. This is the same pick, so nothing new there. At 11, you had Charlotte taking John Collins again. Talked about that fit last time. That would make sense. Number 12, I had them Detroit taking Harry Giles again. And then, who'd you have Detroit taking number 12?
I had them taking Frank Ntilikina. I think that if he falls this far, which is, it's doubtful, but, if he does, I think that Detroit could that really needs help at backup point guard, and
I think they need help at starting point guard. I'm not convinced Reggie Jackson can start.
Yeah, and then of course, alongside Reggie Jackson, I think that if Natoka can develop into that guy that they can build around, and they certainly as we've been talking about, has a great stroke on the ball and is a underrated passer. So I think that if Detroit gets him, I think that he's one of those guys that can make everybody around him better. So I think that that's a good pick for at number 12.
Yeah, I think they'd be really lucky to have him fall that far. 13, both of us had OG Anunoby going to. Oh wait, never mind. Sorry. 13, I had OG Anunoby going there again. Oh yeah, you did have OG Anunoby. Okay, yeah. We both had OG Anunoby going to Denver at 13. We talked about that pick last time. It makes sense. If OG Anunoby develops into that 3-and-D guy, it's over. He's gonna be an awesome player. He could be like Kawhi Leonard almost. And then 14, you had Hartenstein to Miami. That's a pick I put in my last one. We talked about that one. That one makes a lot of sense. Hartenstein next to Whiteside's a good fit. And then I had Terrence Ferguson. I was just going to switch it up. Even though there's no change in this scenario, I could see Miami going a lot of different directions with this pick. So I just switched it up for this scenario. I think Spo's been incredible developing wings the last few years. And I think Terrence Ferguson has a lot of tools that he could groom. You put this pick in your mock last time, so I like this pick a lot.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense logistically, and I think that Miami would be a good place for him. So I think that they have a really great coach and can develop elite talent. So yeah, I think that if they get their hands on him, I think that would be a really good fit for the future.
All right, we are on to the third mock draft scenario. We made it through that one pretty quick, which is good because we got 3 more to do. All right, so this third one, we have the Philadelphia 76ers getting the third pick. The Brooklyn Nets once again getting the second pick and sending it to Boston. And finally, the first overall pick in the 2017 NBA draft goes to the Phoenix Suns. So a lot of this change was in the top 4. The only pick that moved around outside of the top 3 was the Lakers pick, which falls 1 spot to number 4 and gets sent to Philadelphia. So Philadelphia's picking 3rd and 4th here. All right, so number 1 pick. We finally have a change. Lonzo Ball to the Phoenix Suns.
Crazy, man. What does this world come to, man?
Yeah, both of us obviously think Markelle Fultz is a better prospect than Lonzo Ball, but all the intel says that Phoenix likes Ball more than anyone else in the draft, including Markelle Fultz. Chad Ford put a piece on ESPN Insider that was talking about the fact that Phoenix would take Lonzo Ball over Markelle Fultz, and I don't understand it, but I'll mock the pick because I guess that's what they'll do. And I think that he could make for a really fun team with Devin Booker. It'd be a fun offense, but man, that defense would just be awful.
It'd be bargain bin shoddy, man. I mean, Lonzo Ball, of course, has great upside, and I think that he can develop into a good NBA guy, but he certainly has holes in his game, a lot more than Markelle Fultz. You talk about, Lonzo Ball is this transformative passer that you haven't seen since Jason Kidd. But Markelle Fultz, from what we've seen at him at Washington, what I've seen from him at least, he can be just as good as a passer and can have that elite touch on the ball, but just hasn't been able to pass to his teammates because he has terrible teammates. He's been forced to shoot the ball the majority of the time, and I think that he's been very underrated as a passer and is a much more dominant scorer. So I think that whatever Phoenix is thinking, whatever, if they want to use that pick, then I'm sure they're getting a high profile guy, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, number 2, both of us have obviously Boston making the obvious pick, taking Markelle Fultz. Man, they'd luck out in this scenario because Fultz is easily the number 1 prospect in the draft. I think he's the only guy that they shouldn't trade their pick for. I think if they land Fultz, they should keep the pick. I think otherwise they should try to trade it. I think he's the only surefire superstar in this class. If you listen to our podcast from last week over on SoundCloud, then you can see our link to our big boards. And on my big board, I had Fultz as my only tier 1 prospect, my only guy who I thought was a surefire superstar. So I think he's the only guy Boston should really want from this draft with this pick. I think otherwise they should trade it. Yeah, I think Fultz would be super lucky. Boston would be super lucky to get Fultz here. Number 3, Philadelphia. Both of us have Malik Monk going here again. Obvious fit. I think Monk just fits really well in Philadelphia, and I think they take him this high just because I think it's just an easy fit. And then they also have the 4th pick to take another guy with, so that makes sense. But we went different directions with the 4th pick. I had them taking Dennis Smith Jr. just because I think they need a point guard. Even if Ben Simmons will play point guard, I still think they need a true point guard who's actually a point guard. And then some people have put Jason Tatum here or Josh Jackson, but I think it's hard to justify that because they already have a lot of talent in the small forward through center positions. So I think they have to focus on point guard and shooting guard with these picks. I looked at Natokina a little bit, but I think they need a guy who's more advanced as a distributor. So that's why I ended up going with Smith. Who'd you end up going with here for Philadelphia?
I think I went a little bit outside of left field. I went with Jonathan Isaac. I mean, I think that Philly could add another great defensive force into their lineup and a guy that can, be insurance for Embiid if Embiid never gets healthy or, doesn't have the rest of the career as we expect him to have. I think Isaac can fill that defensive void where he can be an elite stopper and he can play into that Philadelphia system that's rebuilding and it should be elite defensively in the coming years. So I think that if they want to add another piece that's worth their money at number 4, I think Dennis Smith Jr., if you take him that high, that's a lot of expectations, and I think that he's a great player, but I think that he certainly comes with downsides.
Yeah. At number 5, both of us had Josh Jackson going to Orlando. This is a pick that makes a lot of sense. I know Tatum's still on the board, and I've picked Tatum to Orlando the last 2 mocks, but I'm kind of split on whether or not Tatum or Jackson makes more sense in Orlando. I really see them going either way. I like Jackson more than I like Tatum, but I think Tatum is a better three-point shooter than Jackson is, and if Orlando's looking for the guy who's the offensive building block, I think Tatum looks more like excuse me. I think Tatum looks more like he can be the offensive building block than Jackson does. But yeah, I think I can see them going either way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if they're looking for a guy that can score the ball, you look for Tatum. But I think that you talk about every other thing, where you fill up the stat sheet in every column. I think that Josh Jackson can be that guy for Orlando. They've desperately needed production from that shooting forward position, and of course, Josh Jackson gives you a huge advantage in that rebounding defensive element too. So either one is an interesting pick for Orlando.
Yeah, and then number 6 to Minnesota. Both of us made picks that we've made before. I had Jonathan Isaac going there again. Again, I love this pick. I'll mock it till the day I die. I love Minnesota taking Jonathan Isaac, and I desperately hope it happens. And then you had Minnesota taking Markkanen. We talked about that fit earlier in the first mock. That's just a great one. We like that one. Both of us like that one. Number 7, we swapped our picks from the first mock. You had them taking De'Aaron Fox. We've talked about the Knicks taking De'Aaron Fox before. That makes sense a lot. It's a replacement for Derrick Rose. And then I had them taking Jason Tatum, who you had going there in our first mock. It's easy to see Phil falling in love with Tatum and overlooking his flaws. He can be that next Carmelo Anthony who scores points and doesn't help his team. So yeah.
Either one of those guys, is like one of those archetyped, flashy New York Knicks, players that they would of course go for. So,
for sure.
Either one, is pretty logical. So, yeah, it makes sense. So.
Yeah, number 8, Sacramento. I'm taking De'Aaron Fox. We've talked about that pick before. You had the Kings taking Fox in your last couple mocks. That rhymed. And then you had a different pick for the Kings at 8, though. You want to talk about that one?
Yeah, I had Tatum. I think Tatum is a good fit for the, talent-desolate Kings. I think Tatum is one of those guys that needs the ball in his hand a lot of the time. I think he's, a ball stopper, similar to, Carmelo, where, if you put him around a lot of guys with talent, I think that he'll sort of stop the movement of the ball. So I think Tatum with Sacramento, I think you can build around him as a scorer, but outside of that, I don't think he lends himself to. Of course, he has a good body for defense and is quick, but it's just wondering how much he'll actually care about the other side of the ball. But I think at that point at number 8, I think that they're looking for an elite scorer, and I think Jason Tatum could be that.
Yeah. Then at 9 and 10, both of us had picks that we've had before. I had Dallas taking Frank Ntilikina, and I had Sacramento taking Lauri Markkanen. Both of us have discussed those. We've discussed those picks before, and then you had Dallas taking Dennis Smith Jr. and Sacramento taking Frank Ntilikina. Again, we've discussed both of those picks. So, yeah, both of those made sense. And then 11, I had, I'll get to my pick in a second, actually, because you had John Collins going to Charlotte again. You want to talk about that one a little bit, because it seems like you really like that pick.
Yeah, I mean, I really like this. I'm very invested in the Hornets. I think that they've had a lot of struggles in recent years, but I think Collins can be one of those impact guys. I think he's a great value at this point, and the Hornets needed a defensive presence to go along with Cody Zeller, as we've said, who can complement each other well. The Hornets offense is one of those pick and roll heavy, the most pick and roll heavy offenses in the league. So I think that John Collins proved this year as a sophomore that he can be a big guy that works well in that system. So if you have a guy like that who can be an impactor on scoring and rebounding and on the defensive side, I think that that'll be the key for Charlotte to continue their rebuilding and pave a path to success. So I really like this pick, and I think that Charlotte loves guys from North Carolina, and of course he's going to Wake Forest. So
yeah,
that he's a really good pick for them right there.
Yeah, at 11, I had Charlotte taking Justin Patton. I'm not going to get lazy and mock Zach Collins here every time. I have Patton higher on my board than Zach Collins. He's actually my number 9 guy. I'm a huge fan of his game. He reminds me of DeAndre Jordan, and I think he gives Charlotte a different dimension at center with his athleticism and defensive upside. And I really like the idea of Justin Patton in Charlotte, just because they have the time to develop him with Cody Zeller already there at center. So yeah, I like that fit a lot. Number 12, you had Isaiah Hartenstein to Detroit. You got a pick missing. Who do you have number 12?
No, number 12. Wait, I had Isaiah Hartenstein. Wait.
Yeah, you got him going to Denver. All right, you get that figured out. I'll talk about my pick.
Sorry.
I had
So at number 12, I had number 12.
You have Terrence Ferguson?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I was sorry. I didn't fill this in, but at number 12, I had Justin Jackson.
Oh, okay. Detroit. Okay.
At number 12, I think that he is what that same mold that Buddy Hield sort of made, where you're a possible first-round pick, but you stay another year to sort of cement yourself as a lottery pick and improve your skills. And I think that Justin Jackson did that at North Carolina. I think that he showed that he can be an elite, three-point shooter and has a great touch on the ball. He also looked really good on the defensive end. In the tournament, he certainly tried really hard and showed that he can be a really good off-ball defender. And he certainly locked up his guys when he was going up against elite guys, when he was playing Kentucky and Gonzaga. So I think that, he can be one of those really good end-of-the-lottery guys that, while he may not have age on his side, he certainly has experience, and he already developed into an elite scorer and has been a pretty good rebounder and defender at North Carolina. So I really liked him.
Yeah, I had Detroit taking Terrence Ferguson at 12. It's another upside play for Detroit. We talked about their need to kind of take a swing for the fences. It's not as much of an upside play as Harry Giles is, but Ferguson doesn't have a lot of proven production at the pro level with the Adelaide 36ers. But I think his athleticism, size, and three-point stroke, if you look at what he did at the Hoop Summit, you look at a guy who has incredible potential. At 13, I had Zach Collins going to Denver. We talked about this pick earlier. You had him going 13 to Denver, I think, in our first mock. So, yeah, I think that's a good fit for him next to Jokic. and then you had Isaiah Hartenstein going to Denver. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, as we've talked about before, you have Jokic, who's a budding superstar. I think that he's one of the best centers in the game, and he showed that he can be a great passer too. So that opens Isaiah Hartenstein, who really showed his full potential as a quick and agile big man in the Nike Hoop Summit. He showed that, for a big man at 7 foot, he's a really tall dude. He can move off ball screens and handle the ball really well and has great control for a huge dude. And I think Denver has time and the personnel to develop a guy like that into an elite scorer and a solid defender on the other side. So I think that if Denver wants to have one of those players that they can really build into something really special, I think that Hartenstein could be that guy.
Yeah, and then at 14, we both had different Collins. I had John Collins in Miami. I don't love his fit next to Whiteside, but I can see him becoming a nice off-the-bench player for them and being coached up into being a good guy in Miami. You had Miami taking Zach Collins. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I had Miami taking Zach Collins. I think that Zach Collins is one of those guys who, has certainly had success on the college level, and I think that will continue to the NBA. He showed that he can be a great system guy where he can play with the people around him. And in Miami, he's going to have a lot of great scorers and big men around him. So alongside Whiteside and that core group there that they already sort of have cemented, I think that he can sort of find his niche as a good rebounder and inside presence when Whiteside, isn't out there or working, with him.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, all right. That's the end of our third mock, and we're going to go into our fourth mock draft. All right. So, with the third pick in the 2017 NBA draft, the Detroit Pistons. What? Yeah, they lead from number 12. Lead from number 12 to number 3, and at number 2, we have the Phoenix Suns staying in their spot, and then the number 1 pick in the 2017 NBA draft goes to the Sacramento Kings. The curse is broken. Oh, wait. They have to send it to Philadelphia. Oh, no. So here's what happens with the rest of the draft. Number 4, you have Boston sliding all the way down to number 4. That's a nightmare scenario for them. We'll talk about that. The Lakers pick goes down to number 5, and it goes to Philadelphia. Philadelphia's pick goes down to number 6, but it's going to Sacramento from that pick swap. Number 7, you have Orlando falling down 2 spots. You have Minnesota falling down 2 spots to number 8. You have New York falling down 2 spots to number 9. And then Dallas falls a spot to number 10. The New Orleans pick falls a spot to number 11. That's going to Sacramento. And Charlotte falls a spot to number 12. And then Denver and Miami rounding it out. So this is a pretty crazy scenario, but we'll get right into it. First pick, Markelle Fultz to Philly. Talked about that. Makes a lot of sense. We love it. Second pick, Lonzo Ball to Phoenix. Talked about that too. He's not getting past Phoenix. No way. So there's that. And then third for Detroit, both of us made the same pick here. Jason Tatum. Again, they need to take that big home run swing to try to get that superstar guy who can be that number 1 scorer for them. And I think Tatum looks like he can be that guy. So, yeah, I think that makes sense on their part, getting Tatum there.
Yeah, I think if you get Tatum there, I think you can build around him and give him free will to shoot the basketball. And I mean, I think that they need a scorer and to revitalize their offense. So I think that he would be a good piece. If you are desperate for guys on the offensive side, then I think that he can be that guy. So. Yeah,
and then at 4, both of us had the same pick, Jonathan Isaac to Boston. We talked about that with your first scenario. Isaac isn't a perfect fit in Boston, but if they're picking at 4, I think they kind of have to pick him. It's a nightmare scenario for Boston. I think they try to get out of this spot, but I don't know if they're going to get Jimmy Butler with the 4th pick. But I still think they'd be fine grabbing Isaac. I mean, as I've said, he's the number 2 guy on my board. He doesn't solve the rebounding woes, but he can be their power forward of the future. He can play with Jaylen Brown and be like Jaylen Brown and Jonathan Isaac at your forward spots would be such a nightmare on defense going forward. And both of those guys have a lot of athleticism and potential on offense. So I don't think it's a complete lost cause for Boston getting Isaac there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that this is the home run swing that Boston hoped, when they said, okay, we're going to make this blockbuster trade. But I think that if they can't get anything at the fourth pick, because I don't think Chicago is bold enough to trade for a number 4 pick for, a superstar. So, I mean, if they don't get any trade action, I think that will be fine. I think, Isaac is a good fit, and I think that they can certainly give that boost, and I think he'll develop over time, and I think he'll be an elite defender, and will be good on the offensive side. So,
we talked about it.
You take what you're given, so, I think Isaac would be good at number 4.
Yeah, number 5, Malik Monk to Philly. This is an easy one. We both made the pick once again. Yeah. Number 6, I went with Josh Jackson to Sacramento. I think that's a great pickup for Sacramento, getting Jackson right there. He's my number 4 guy. Getting him at number 6 would be a steal for the Kings. They don't really have a small forward right now, and his fit with Buddy Hield and Scala this year makes sense, similar to how his fit with Devin Booker and Marquese Chriss currently is. Who'd you have at 6?
Number 6, I had De'Aaron Fox. At this point, I think Sacramento wants to get, a big-time player and possibly the most talented guy.
We talked about this pick.
I think that the one thing hindering Josh Jackson is, he's not going to be that guy that puts up, 20 a night or anything. I think that he's going to be one of those guys that can have a big impact while not scoring, every possession. But I think that Sacramento needs, a force to build around. So I think that that's Fox. I think he's a big-time player and can put some life back into that offense. So, if they're looking for the most talent, I think that's Fox. So
number 7 for Orlando. We had them going different directions. You had them taking Josh Jackson, which we've talked about. We've talked about Orlando with Josh Jackson. That's a pick that I think makes a lot of sense. I can definitely see them taking him there. Getting him at 7 would be a real steal, though. That'd be a real nice move for them. I had at 7 for Orlando. Had them taking Frank Ntilikina. I thought about Lauri Markkanen and Dennis Smith, but I ended up choosing Ntilikina because he can play the 1 and the 2, whereas I see Smith is strictly a 1 and he can't play with Elfrid Payton. And I see Markkanen is strictly a 4 and he can't play with Aaron Gordon. So I think Ntilikina's versatility is the key for Orlando here. And, I like that pick. Number 8, both of us had Lauri Markkanen going to Minnesota. We've talked about that pick. It's a great pick. It's a great match. One thing I'd like to mention about Lauri Markkanen in Minnesota is I'd like to compare it to Ryan Anderson and Anthony Davis together in New Orleans. And I was looking at some lineup stats from a couple years ago. That two-man combination in New Orleans of Ryan Anderson and Anthony Davis had a plus 6.8 net rating, which was a really good net rating. So I think Markkanen and Towns going forward would be a great fit together.
Yeah, they certainly complement each other, and I think Cat is going to be a huge time player. And I think Markkanen can develop into an elite scorer, and I think that Tom Thibodeau will do wonders with both of those guys. So I think that would be a great fit.
Number 9 with the Knicks, I have them taking De'Aaron Fox. We've talked about this pick before, the Knicks getting Fox. Who did you have the Knicks taking at number 9?
I had Dennis Smith Jr., the Knicks substitute to De'Aaron Fox, because I believe that Sacramento will swipe him up if they can at number 6. So I think, Dennis Smith Jr., of course we talked about it, he's a big-time player for a big-time city. So I think the Knicks, certainly need a upgrade at the point guard spot. I think Dennis Smith Jr. can develop into a starting point guard and can be, he has elite athleticism and has developed at NC State so far. So I think that he can continue to develop and grow, in New York. So he'll be, one of those flashy, Knicks players. So I think that'd be an interesting fit.
Yeah, number 10, both of us had point guards going to Dallas that we've talked about before. I had Dennis Smith ending up there. We've talked about him with one of your mocks. You had Smith going there. You had Frank Ntilikina going to Dallas. We've talked about that one too. And then number 11, you had Zach Collins ending up in Sacramento. We talked about that one before. And then I ended up putting Justin Jackson there because I think the Kings have a clear need at small forward, and Vivek clearly values college production. So I think those two things together would end up making a lot of sense with Justin Jackson ending up in Sacramento.
Yeah, I like Justin Jackson. I think that would be a good stepping stone for him. Sacramento, of course, needs help at that position. So I think, yeah, of course, Justin Jackson has shown that he's reliable, and has shown that he can be consistent year after year. A lot more than a lot of the freshmen. So I think that would be a very reliable pick for Sacramento.
Yeah. Number 12, I had Charlotte ending up with Zach Collins. That's a pick we've talked about, Charlotte and Zach Collins. So that one makes sense. Number 12, Charlotte, you had John Collins. Talked about that one before. That makes sense. 13 in Denver, you had them taking Isaiah Hartenstein. Talked about that one. 13 for Denver, I had taken Justin Patton. We talked about Justin Patton in Charlotte with the last one. I think he'd fit really interesting with Jokic. I could see that kind of being like how Blake Griffin and DeAndre play together, where Blake Griffin operates out of the high post and DeAndre plays out of the low post, and Patton can be that rim protector on defense next to Jokic, who's not a very good defender. So I liked that fit of Patton in Denver. And then 14 at Miami, you haven't taken Terrence Ferguson. We've talked about that one. And I had him taken Isaiah Hartenstein. We've talked about that one. So yeah, made it through that one pretty quick. And we're on to the last scenario. Not as crazy as the last one where we had Sacramento jumping 7 spots and Detroit dropping 9 spots, but this last scenario is an interesting one because it's pretty close to how it's actually going to end up, or at least how it's actually supposed to end up. So with the third pick, the Brooklyn Nets, who will be sending it to Boston. With the second pick, the LA Lakers, who are keeping their pick for the first time in this podcast. And with the first pick, the Phoenix Suns. With this pick, I have the Phoenix Suns taking Lonzo Ball. Once again, as they got the first pick in that other draft, I had him taking Lonzo Ball. We talked about it. They love him. They'll take him anywhere. You had that same pick. And then
the one question I had for you, Jackson, if the Lakers got the number 1 pick, who do you think would they take? Of course, they're very high on Lonzo. Magic Johnson was at some of his college games. Do you think that they would go for Markelle Fultz, or would they go for the more flashy Ball?
I think they'd take Ball because I think Magic Johnson would see a lot of himself in that. I don't think it's the right pick, obviously, but I do think that's what the Lakers would end up doing.
Yeah, so maybe them getting the number 2 pick would be a blessing in disguise, seeing that they end up with the more talented guy, even though they didn't want him.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, obviously both of us have Fultz going to the Lakers at 2, and as Cesar said, this would be a blessing in disguise for LA. He'd be really exciting next to D'Angelo Russell, and they wouldn't have to deal with the awful defense in the backcourt that Lonzo Ball would bring along with D'Angelo Russell. And then I think it could end up becoming really toxic with LeVar Ball trying to become involved quickly in that Lakers organization. I mean, I think he might try to become involved in any organization, but I think especially an organization like the Lakers, who's going through change and who have already, LA's in the bright lights, I think that could end up being a really toxic combination.
Yeah, I think that, if LeVar tries to, invade that space and, have more power than, just parents should have, then I think that could certainly impact them. And, if Lonzo wants to be the best that he can, I think that he needs to sort of find his own lane outside of his, his dad. I think that he has the potential, but I think that he needs to show that, he can do it on his own, without his dad being his own hype man. So,
yeah.
I think that if he ends up outside of the Lakers, I think that he could find, and do what he was, he has always said that he wants to do, win and build a great culture. So I think that if he ends up in Phoenix, I think that would be a good fit, with Devin Booker. You have an instant scorer right there, and then other developing guys around him. So you benefit from that great passing. So, of course, I think that would be an interesting fit. So,
yeah. Number 3, you had them taking Jonathan Isaac or trading the pick. We've talked about Jonathan Isaac in Boston. I had them taking Josh Jackson. I think we've talked about this one, but if we haven't, I like Jackson in Boston. I know I had them taking Isaac over Isaac over Jackson earlier. I think they could really go either way with this pick. I think Jackson's more talented, I think Isaac's a better player overall, but I think Jackson might actually fit a little bit better in Boston, so I can see them going either way. Number 4, both of us had Malik Monk going to Philadelphia. I think every time we've had Malik Monk going to Philadelphia, all 10 mocks. So I pencil that pick down as happening if the opportunity arises.
Yeah, I think that's like the ideal guy. If Philly doesn't, land the first pick, then I think that's going to be their guy. And I think that, he's a big time scorer and a great shooter. And I don't think people realize that he's a big dude at almost 240. He's, he's a hefty guy.
No, Malik Monk, no. You're thinking of the wrong guy.
Oh, excuse me. But he's a big guy. He's very chiseled. And I think that he's very quick and is very agile along with being a good shooter.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then number 5, both of us had Jason Tatum going to Orlando. That's a pick we talked about. It makes a lot of sense. Number 6, you had Markkanen ending up in Minnesota. That's your big Minnesota pick that you like a lot. Number 6, I wanted to make this mock a little bit more exciting, so I decided to have Minnesota trade this pick. I had them send Andrew Wiggins, the 6th pick, and other pieces to the Bulls for Jimmy Butler. And then I had the Bulls taking Dennis Smith Jr. with this pick. So I think they try to build this explosive core around Wiggins. So they have Dennis Smith Jr. and Wiggins building that core with Smith as that point guard of the future. So I think, I just kind of want to spice this mock up a little bit instead of sending Jason Tatum to Minnesota again. Yeah, so I just made that little trade scenario.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, I think Andrew Wiggins is is certainly a high-profile guy. That'd be quite an interesting trade, to get him and, since he's been one of the cornerstones of their offense, and to, trade him off, that'd be a huge step for them. I mean, of course, I think, and, what I've seen, he gets along well with Cat, who's, of course, Karl-Anthony Towns, of course, who's the, best player on that offense. But, if they're really wanting to switch things up, that'd be certainly an interesting trade.
Yeah, for sure. Number 7, both of us had De'Aaron Fox going to the New York Knicks. We've talked about that one. That's a pretty obvious fit. We've talked about it. Number 8, I had Frank Ntilikina ending up in Sacramento. I think we've talked about this one. Ntilikina, the Sacramento needs a point guard. Yeah, we've talked about Ntilikina in Sacramento. Makes sense. He can play next to Buddy Hield. So, yeah. And then Dennis Smith Jr. in Sacramento, you had, and that's another pretty obvious fit. Number 9, you had Dallas taking Frank Ntilikina. Talked about that one. Number 9, I had Dallas taking Jonathan Isaac. I don't think Isaac will end up falling this far, but if he does, I think he'd be a steal for Dallas because I think him and Harrison Barnes can play the 3 and the 4 together interchangeably. So I think that'd be good, especially next to Nerlens Noel. That'd be a real defensive powerhouse.
Yeah, that'd be a really good pick. I mean, depending on what they do with Noel and how they shift him, I think that'd be a great lineup. Talk about defensive force.
Yeah, for sure. Number 10, I had Lauri Markkanen. We've talked about Sacramento getting Lauri Markkanen there. It's a pick that makes a lot of sense. You had them taking Zach Collins. We talked about that one. Makes a lot of sense. Number 11, you had Charlotte taking John Collins. That's another one we've talked about. Again, just makes a lot of sense. You've talked about John Collins ending up in Charlotte. I had Zach Collins going to Charlotte at number 11. Talked about that one too. Number 12, I want to spice this mock up a little bit again, so I chose another trade. And I decided Detroit's going to make a trade to get a point guard. And unless they're super high on Jawan Evans, they're not getting a good point guard at 12. So what they do is they send the 12th pick, Stanley Johnson, and Reggie Jackson in a 3-way trade. And Stanley Johnson, the 12th pick, and Mario Hezonja end up in Phoenix. Reggie Jackson and Toronto's 2018 second rounder via Phoenix ends up in Orlando. And Eric Bledsoe ends up in Detroit. So Detroit gets their point guard by getting Eric Bledsoe, and Phoenix trades Eric Bledsoe because they got Lonzo Ball. And then Phoenix ends up picking Jared Allen with that pick. I think Jared Allen would fit very nicely with the Suns' other young frontcourt pieces, Chris and Bender, because neither of those guys is a very good rebounder. And Allen can be that rebounding center for them. And so I like that a lot. So Detroit trades it, gives it to Phoenix. Phoenix takes Jared Allen at 12. Number 13, you had Denver taking Isaiah Hartenstein. That's one we've talked about. We like it. Number 13, I had Denver taking Justin Patton. That's one I talked about in the last mock. So, yeah, Justin Patton in Denver makes sense. And then 14, Miami taking Isaiah Hartenstein. That's one we've talked about a lot. Makes sense next to Whiteside. It's a good pick. And then you had Miami taking Terrence Ferguson 14 in this scenario, which is one we've talked about. All right. Well, we made it through these, Cesar.
Yeah, quite some interesting scenarios. One fascinating thing I think about, like, I mean, it's crazy to me to think that, Phoenix's relationship with Eric Bledsoe, because Eric Bledsoe just came off of a career year, averaging 21.1 points and almost, 7 assists, which is really good. And, you think about a guy that, has developed that well, and of course he was, has really blossomed there. But, I mean, if they want to move him, another team is going to get a really good point guard who's 27, is still in his prime. So I think that'd be whoever gets them. If you're talking about a trade with Detroit or something, I think that he's a very underrated piece and undervalued by Phoenix. So if someone lands him through a trade, I think that'd be a huge success on whoever's receiving him. Whoever's receiving him, whether it's Detroit or anybody else.
Yeah, I just think he doesn't fit with Phoenix's timeline, which is the main reason I think they're looking to trade him. Which that makes sense to me. All right, you got anything else you want to discuss with these?
No, I think we're all good, man. Everybody, thank you for tuning
Yeah, thank you.
To the first episode, on iTunes. So thanks, everybody. Hope, see you all in the next podcast,
Yeah, be sure to drop a review because this is our first time doing this on iTunes, so we'd love to hear what you thought. Love to hear constructive criticism. This one ran a little long, we know, but we'll try to trim it down a little bit, see if we can cut some stuff out to speed it up. But yeah, thanks for listening. We really enjoyed it, and see you next time. This is fun.
Yeah,
see you, Cesar.
on the flip.